Is Zelensky safe? The tariff debacles, the cutting down of US forests and protected trees, a boycott of American booze by the UK, Canada, the EU, and Mexico, and more measles deaths. Let's look into that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First of all, a huge thank you to everybody who watches, likes the videos. If you comment on the videos, a big, big thank you. If you're subscribed to the channel, a huge thank you to you. And if you've ever donated to the channel, a big, big thank you. Um, there's a lot going on. Um, so I'm recording this on Thursday. I probably won't post another video until Monday. Um, I'm occasionally work for some real estate agents and go to some houses that have like weird energies to them and try to work to alleviate that. I do this with a friend of mine who's um, a Hindu priest. Um, so if I'm just curious if you guys would be interested in maybe learning more about that. Drop a comment if you are. But let's get to the topics at hand. So let's start with Zelensky, then we'll move to the tariffs. Trump said the felon said something about cutting down uh, US protected trees to deal with lumber prices. And Canada's already boycotting American liquor in a lot of provinces. Will that expand to the UK, the EU, Canada, and Mexico if these tariffs go forward? And there was another tragic measles death, completely avoidable, that happened today. So let's look into all of that. But let's start with Zelensky. The felon said something to the effect of, he won't be around much longer if the war doesn't end. Was that a death threat? It certainly could be perceived that way. Um, or was it just kind of he'll lose his grip on power, which doesn't seem likely. I've never seen that. I think he's got a lot of support in the Ukraine. But is he safe? So this might sound a little odd, but one of the things I do when I'm trying to provide healing energy to people is if I take my hands and I put them like this and I concentrate on the person or the place, I'll feel my hands get really warm. And I feel like that sends out protective energy. Maybe that's something you might want to try. Or if you're stressed about something, it's something to do. It's at least meditative. So it certainly can't hurt. But let's look at the cards and see, is Zelensky uh safe? I think I will always tell the truth on this channel, whether it's good news or bad news. I think safe is too strong of a word. Um, he's certainly in danger. The question is, will he be okay? So let's just ask the question, can you show us Zelensky in the next 6 months? Can you show us how Zelensky will be doing over the next 6 months? I fear that he's not safe, but I'm somewhat consoled by the fact that I know they know he's not safe. So I think they're being extra cautious, but at the same time, he's his energy is very interesting. He's kind of a stubborn person, as is kind of what I get. So I don't think that if he were told, you need to flee Ukraine because you're not safe, I don't think he would do that. I think he's going to stay there. So is he safe? Let me show us over the next 6 months. The water I see like I guess it's like a candelabra and people lighting the candles, one from two people, one from each side towards the middle. I think he's got a lot of, you know, healing type energy being sent towards him, lots of prayers. Yeah, he's got to defend himself. He's certainly not safe. That doesn't mean anything's going to happen to him. That's just the reality. The problem is how quickly things are changing and adapting to that, adapting to, the United States perhaps cutting off foreign aid. It's a little confusing on what's true and what's not true anymore, but that seems to be the case. But ultimately, he has everything he needs to stay protected with the Nine of Pentacles. We get death, but it's in the past, and it's important that it's in the past. So certainly he's been surrounded by a lot of death. And I think that's what this is. And it's in the past because ultimately this is the biggest thing that will shape his life is what Ukraine has gone through. I don't think that is for him. I think that's just what he's experienced in the past that's shaping his worldview today and why he may or may not sign off to uh, peace deals depending upon what they're in. We get reunions and celebrations in the sky. We get the emperor in the near term future. This is abuse of power, presidency, the leadership. In this instance, I think this is just saying Zelensky is going to remain in charge of the Ukraine in the near future. That this idea of you step down and we'll sign a peace thing, even though he's willing to step down, because I don't think he cares about the power. I think he just cares about the people. And if the deal's not sufficient, he's not going to do it. So I think he remains in power. We get a lot of passion and support for him with the Queen of Wands. The feeling of isolation and being alone and trying to shed a light on that is kind of his mission. And by being alone, I mean the Ukraine feels sort of betrayed. Ukrainians feel, can't think of a non-swear word. Um, they're angry at what the felon is doing and portraying Putin as some sort of reasonable figure. And in that sense, they feel alone, but they know they're not. It's just a feeling. In the hopes and fears we get planting seeds for a future. So the hope is that they can come to some sort of reasonable end to the war that kind of abides by UN standards which seems hard to see how they do that. Giving up territory, I think, is gonna be the hardest part to try to deal with. We do get bombshells and surprises in the outcome. We get an offer and leadership around money, things coming forward. Perhaps this is Europe really stepping up. And we get the sun card, which is full illumination, things being revealed. And it's a definite yes card. So I think for the time being, he's as safe as he can be for someone in the situation. It's a new situation around money, a new situation around how to get weapons, a new situation around everything since the felon took over. There's movement, it's changing, uh, but they're hard at work. So they're prepared. If one plan doesn't work, they have another. Don't think that the Russians have them vastly outmatched. It's not true. If that were the case, they would have already won and taken over Ukraine. Um, the US giving weapons certainly helped, but it's also, Russia's having to pay people to join the military, right? And there are North Korean soldiers, not too long ago that Ukraine captured. So North Koreans are going to help. Russia's not in good shape. Um, so I think depending upon your age bracket and your information absorption rate in Russia probably determines whether you are opposed to the war or support it because you just don't have a lot of information. So I think inside Russia there's a lot of turmoil that we don't often hear about. Okay, so what's up with these tariffs? They're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. And we're pausing them for a month. And Canada says, or the leader of Ontario, province of Ontario says, we're going to stop giving electricity to the United States. And and Canadian liquor stores have in several provinces have removed US liquor from the shelves, which the makers of Jack Daniels came out and said that's worse than a tariff because it took away all our sales, which apparently is only 1% of their sales. So they say it's not a huge deal. But if that were joined by a bunch of others, I think it could be quite devastating to the US economy. And we already have an event in history, the Smoot uh, Holly tariffs, where essentially Canada started just building a closer relationship with the UK and Europe and Mexico. Well, maybe not Mexico in the 20s, but that would probably be what happens today. Okay, so will these tariffs go forward? Tariffs go forward. So in the water, I'm just seeing like a like a down arrow. I think they might go forward, but they'll be pared down quite dramatically from what he was originally proposing. Because I mean, if we're honest, the felon is just, I mean, he's just not very smart. That's just the way it is. But at the same time, I think he feels like he's going to have to save his face because he's such a narcissist that no tariffs would be kind of admitting defeat, even though I think he's probably realized that tariffs are not the way to go. So yeah, we get the Sun card. Something's going to continue, but we're going to get more information about the effects of them before it happens. And the image is kind of a roller coaster, which is exactly what we've been on. Is that they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. Stock market goes down, stock market goes up. The challenge is this new reality. You, Nobody really wants this. That's his problem. That's the biggest challenge. Now, yes, Republicans stood up and applauded when he talked about it at his, hate fest of a speech full of nothing but lies. But the truth is, I don't think they want them either because they realize that. And, senators from, especially from certain states, definitely don't want them to go forward. They're very nervous about them. Republican lawmakers in Michigan, for example, very nervous about the effects on the auto industry. It's causing a lot of anxiety for everybody involved. And one of the things I think is important, how to say, there's a lot of horrible things going on in the world right now, right? And the felon is part of that. But we somehow have to keep, making progress in our own personal lives and doing what we can in the broader scope. So living in this anxiety is tough. And I think a lot of us are there. In the past, we get the Eight of Wands. Something happened very quickly. He got a message very fast. I don't think he was quite prepared for Trudeau and the president of Mexico to like immediately have a response. I think he's so arrogant that he thought he had the upper hand as if they weren't preparing for these things. And Canada's preparing for even worse situations, preparing to like the relationship between the two countries basically to break down. We get the Page of Pentacles, a message about money. And I think the message about money was actually the message going to the felon from the stock market saying, hey, I'm sure that's why he put the latest pause on is because the stock market fell and his friends on Wall Street, while they probably were short the market and making money, ultimately know that, you can make a lot more money when the market goes up than when it goes down with a lot less risk. Yeah, in the near term future, we get the Ten of Swords, complete and utter downfall. This kind of ruins his public image that he's good for the economy. People no longer are going to think that he's good for the economy. This is going to be the end. Will he move forward with them? I think there will be some tariffs. I don't think that he has the ability to say I was wrong. So something's going to happen. It's about giving and receiving of money. It's about trade, repayments of loans and debts. We get the Ten of Pentacles. This is the inheritance card. There's a few different ways, a few different thoughts that came to my mind here. The pentacles are actually behind the person walking through a very dark alley. So the wealth is behind her. That could be one way to look at it, as in there's going to be some tough economic times to come forward. That's kind of what I'm getting from that card. In the hopes and fears, there's the page of swords. This is the spy in the camp, right? The person holding the swords is hiding behind it like a barrier of sorts and can't be seen. The hope is that there's somebody that is reasonable that can explain the craziness of the felon to the right people so that it doesn't become this tit for tat that keeps escalating, because it's 25% today and then they retaliate with 25%, then he ups it to 30%, they retaliate with 30%, and the next thing you know, nobody can afford anything. I don't think that's going to happen. um, but that's his mentality. So the hope is that there's somebody there to keep that from going on. We do get the star card of hope and protection, and we get the six of swords, moving away from troubled waters. I'm not going to say the worst is behind us because I don't think that's true. But what I do think is true is that they won't be as extreme as what's been proposed. And when we get the magician card, this is sometimes my card for Elon Musk. The spacesuit kind of confirms that Elon might be pushing for this crazy things, but I think he's starting to fall out of favor with a lot of people, including the Treasury Secretary. So with the world card, the end of a cycle, just basically the end of the relationship between the US, Canada, and Mexico as it was. Now, will it go back to the way it was when the felon leaves? It's quite possible that that just gets repaired rather quickly. We get things coming to the surface with the moon card, things being revealed. We get the Four of Cups, and this imagery is very interesting here. Is the person's just going about life, but they feel like they're barely keeping their head above water. And I think that is how a lot of this is going to feel economically for the next several months. I do think things get better towards the summer months, but um, I think things are, and I've said this from the beginning of 2025 predictions that things were going to be hard in the beginning of the year. Okay, so the felon said one way we could, so most of the lumber in the US we get from Canada, is my understanding, or a good portion of it, maybe not most, but a good portion of the lumber comes from Canada. The felon said, oh, well, we can start harvesting lumber from these protected forests like the national forest and other um, Bureau of Land Management lands. So will that happen? Will there ever be harvesting of lumber from public lands for the purpose of trying to keep lumber prices down in response to tariffs? I mean, every once in a while things are very clear and there's just this huge flashing no, no, no. And yeah, I just heard there's nobody that's willing to harvest the lumber. It is a good point. You know, the lumber companies that are already in the US are probably, you know, they've maximized their profits, right? There's an algorithm to everything that tells them how much lumber to harvest, and they might actually benefit from higher lumber prices. So, you know, I just don't see it happening. We get the Five of Swords. Yeah, this would just lead to like it's like the minor arcana death card, right? It would just lead to the end of all respect for him. Because, the US as a country, there are a few things that people take great pride in, and one of them is the national parks. The challenge is the people, circles of support for our open spaces, especially the people that live in urban areas that visit these open spaces as like a relief zone. The people that live in the open spaces already appreciate them, but they might take them a little bit for granted. But um, yeah, I just don't think this is gonna work. We get the sun card to there's no way to spin this where it doesn't come out as you're cutting down forests. So the truth is will already be there. In the past, we get the spy in the camp with the page of swords. In this case, I think that kind of just refers to Elon Musk and his ilk of, yeah, we can make up for all these tariffs in various ways. We get the voters, the Four of Wands. Nobody asked for forests to be cut down. We get the Four of Swords in the near future, ill health. This might actually be a turning point where people start to question his mental health and his mental fitness if he moves forward with this idea of we should cut down forests. Because you can't just cut down forests and have them grow back, right? It takes a lot of planning, and we're not there. We get the Ace of Wands, a fiery new beginning, a new way of thinking about leadership, perhaps even new leadership. And we get the Ten of Swords, complete and utter downfall. It's twice already for the felon that he's got the Ten of Swords. And I think this would be completely unthinkable. We get the Four of Pentacles and the hopes and fears. This is a hope for financial stability. Whether we get it or not is another story, but that's the hope. And the outcome, we get the Nine of Pentacles. We already have everything we need. We just need to be smart, and let's just keep doing the way we're doing. We get the end of a cycle with the World card, things coming to an end, a new beginning starting. And the end is about the next generation. We get the Six of Cups, thinking about what's next and ahead. And ultimately, this is why the forests will be just fine. Nobody's going to cut them down. We get deceit, trickery underneath the Seven of Swords. And the Queen of Cups, the hope for consistency, steady leadership, the truth, uh, emotional stability. It's just not going to happen. So he might talk a big game about this huge resource the United States has as far as lumber goes. But the truth is, it's minor in comparison to the vast resources that Canada has when it comes to lumber. So it's just not going to happen. Okay. So what about this boycott on U.S. liquor? Will the boycott on U.S. liquor expand if these tariffs go forward? And it's kind of a very smart strategy by Canada, and if it's adopted by other countries, because what it ultimately would do would raise the price of liquor in the US. And if there's one thing that the MAGA folks would notice, it'd be the rising of gasoline prices, and then probably the rising of liquor prices would be next. There's a very high correlation between the rising of beer prices and presidential elections. Well, it's a bargaining chip for sure. I think there will be discussions about this if there are threats of tariffs. The retaliation will just be like, well, we don't need US products. We can just trade with other people. This is why this is never going to work. What does the US make that you can't find somewhere else? There's very few things. Yeah, we get the full card. It's foolish to think that the world can't live without stuff from the United States. It's very foolish. The challenge is the burdens that it would put on the US consumer and taxpayer. It would be devastating. Not just the boycott of liquor, but the side effects that come with that, the loss of jobs and so on and so forth. It all just starts to add up. It would be a fiery new beginning and probably would come with new leadership. There would be a demand that, you know, in particular, the midterm elections would probably be a big blow for Republicans. We get the Three of Swords in the past. Americans already feel heartbroken, financially heartbroken. Like they feel like they're not getting ahead. I don't know how it is in your family, but in my family and the people that are in our inner circle, the talk of retirement seems like further away, right? It just feels like things have been dramatic. We're at a crossroads, the two wands. With the Queen of Cups in the near future, people coming to their senses, knowledge, wisdom, wish fulfillment. Countries are going to know how to respond. We get messages about money. The question is, will they be received? We get the King of Wands, passion, steadiness, logic, in the hopes and fears. It's a hope. And the outcome, we get the Empress card. That's interesting. That's the card for Russia. Along with the King of Swords, steady leadership. And the Queen of Pentacles, consistency around money. There might be some Russian influence to try to push these tariffs too. That's an interesting angle that I hadn't really thought about, whether Putin is trying to push him down this road. But ultimately, it's about families, reunions, celebrations coming together. And if he does it, the Ten of Swords, it's complete and utter downfall. So I don't think that he will be able to move forward with things that are going to be retaliated with in such a way as and that's going to be the threat as well. If you do these tariffs, we're going to just boycott buying liquor or tobacco products or things that are kind of affects the red states more than the blue states, right? Like they don't grow tobacco in New York or California, probably. Like, maybe they do in California, I don't know. But they definitely grow a lot of tobacco in the South, for example. Okay. So there was another young, innocent child that died of measles today. Are there more measles deaths to come? And if so, what do we need to learn from that? So RFK came out and encouraged people to get vaccinations of their children up to the measles, which was shocking and surprising. So devil card, mis and disinformation. Um, but then at the same time, touted that, oh, you can take vitamin A, or I forget all the home remedies that he was suggesting that are completely non-scientific. Will there be more? So I did a reading maybe a week or two ago where I thought there would be more outbreaks, but I thought parents might start to come to their senses and start to vaccinate their unvaccinated children. Something we can't see, the high priestess. Something's going on behind the scenes that we can't see. I think maybe fathers, maybe mothers are secretly sneaking their kids off to get vaccinated. The challenge is in this case, I think unplanting the seeds that vaccinations are bad. And it's definitely a crossroads for a lot of people. In the past, we had moving away from troubled waters. This was the vaccine. Like, nobody needs to die of the measles. Just don't. There's a vaccine. It's absolutely crazy that everybody in this country thinks they're an expert on every topic. I don't know when that happened, but it's very disturbing. We have temperance. And maybe that's harsh of me to say that, everybody thinks they're an expert. Not everybody, but we all know people who think they know more than they know, giving medical advice when they're not doctors, you know. So in the sky, we get temperance. It's a hope for moderation, a hope for return to logic. The star card, there's protection in the near future. The protection's the vaccines, if people are willing to get their kids the vaccines. Some aren't. I think we're going to see more young people, unfortunately, dying of a very preventable disease. But some people are going to get the message. Some young parents are going to get the message. In the hopes and fears, we get the Five of Swords. We're hoping that from the tragedies, comes knowledge. Whether it does or not, that's the question. There's a lot of anxiety. There's anxiety amongst the parents whose kids are vaccinated. There's anxiety of just being exposed to that. The German measles in particular are very dangerous to pregnant women. The measles themselves it's not good for pregnant women to be around them. So there's just a lot of anxiety about these things. And there's a lot of passion. And unfortunately, the passion's on both sides. There's a lot of passionate anti-vaccine people who've just been misinformed about what it's about. And we get reunions and celebrations. That's a hope that we can have that again. Right now, I think there's this pulling apart of, parents probably a little bit more reluctant to let their kids go to sleepovers and stuff like that. It's the end of a cycle, the world card. What's the end of? It's the end of logic. Like, people aren't acting logically anymore. And it's going to cause people to rethink relationships. But we do get the Sun card. Some people will be enlightened. What will they be enlightened about? They'll be enlightened about the health scare, the ill health that can come from such things as the measles and other things that are easily preventable with vaccines. So, yeah, I think there'll be some more deaths, unfortunately. That's what I see. Um, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. All right. I'll be back with another video probably on Monday. Um, Leave me a comment if you're interested in cleansing spaces of like weird energies. All right. Thanks, everyone.